Yesterday might have been one of the most interesting days of my life, simply for the fact that it was an old experience with a new perspective, because I had to go to my sister's baptism yesterday. Not only did I have to go to my sister's baptism, but I had to attend the church service that was being portrayed at the same time. Because I thought the baptism would only last about, a half hour and we'd be out of there. And it was the main show for the night. But no, I forgot that it was Saturday. And of course all churches have like a Saturday service. And the baptism was nothing more than a gimmick to be played during some songs or whatever. So that like on a big screen they would see someone get baptized, and while they were singing they'd be like, "Oh yeah, Jesus, Jesus." So while I was attending the service, I wrote down some notes, and it was a very interesting service. I have to give the guy credit. He did a very thorough job about his perspective and telling people their perspective. I might have to make this into a few parts, but I'll try to get this all in 10 minutes. So the first note I have is too many children not interested, meaning every time I looked around, I saw little kids no older than 5, and they were bored shitless. They did not want to be there. And it almost, gave me a heart to break, because, I don't have a heart. But there was this kid who was walking with his parents, and he was talking about, "I'm gonna learn Exodus chapter 4 to 8 today, Mommy. I'm gonna try, Mommy." Now, to be fair, the kid looked like he was 7. But really, I think you believe everything your parents tell you up to 8. About 8 is when you start questioning shit a lot more thoroughly. But of course, he's far too deep in the religion trench now. He's never gonna get out. He wasn't even given a fucking chance in life. He was given a path and told, "Hey, walk this path." It saddens me a lot, because I was on that same path for a while too, and I don't know how the fuck I broke out. But I know that that kid probably won't, because he was way even deeper than I ever was at such a young age. It was ridiculous. Alright, my second note is people are different with loud music. Because, okay, I wrote this down because I saw my cousin is very quiet and to himself all the time. But when there's like fucking million decibel music and some guy screaming about Jesus on a fucking microphone in front of everyone on stage, my cousin was like, putting his hands up in the air, and he was like, "Ah, Jesus, Jesus." That's when I lost it. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Was I thrown to the lions? Like, what the hell am I doing here? I am not a Christian. Why am I being thrown to the lions? Okay, the next note is I'll just go over this really quick, because they were describing what a baptism was, and the only thing I can think of while they were describing it was Buttsecks. They said you have to give your life to Jesus and his life to you. You gotta give his ass to you and your ass to him. Anyways, the next note, I don't have any studies to prove this, but I'm pretty sure that if you get someone who is about to be baptized on stage, 90% of the time when you ask them, "Tell us about your religion story and how you came to Jesus," the first words out of their mouth will be, "Well, when I was little," which is of course what my sister did before she got baptized. My next note is, oh yeah, there was prayer every 5 minutes. Like every 5 minutes on the fucking minute, there was prayer. Let's just bow our heads and pray. Okay. Dear Jesus, in Jesus' holy name. It was gagging. Alright, now, this is when the preacher started talking. He said something about the mountains being all crisp and beautiful and a testament to Jesus' name, so I just wrote watchmaker. If he is trying to make an argument, which I know he isn't because he's not arguing to anyone, he's preaching to a choir. And then I forgot my wallet. I wrote down "forgot wallet" when they were bringing the donation thingy around for everyone. Now this is when the sermon started, because there was 2 preachers. One was just preaching, about the church, and the other one is doing the sermon. This is when the sermon started. He started talking about how only the Lord can bring strangers together. And I said to myself, well, what the fuck does that mean? Doesn't school bring people together? Doesn't work bring strangers together? Doesn't the promise of sex bring strangers together? Because at one time, you were strangers with your girlfriend. Just saying. Okay, now the central point of this sermon was to answer a question: how can I believe in a God who sends people to hell? That was the focal point of this sermon. And during this, he made an example of like, don't you just have that quirky friend who just, in public, just says to everybody, are all Asians bad drivers? And I was like, wow, dude, you're pretty hardcore. That's pretty racist, dude. Wow. Dude. Now, when I was writing these notes down, I was freaking the hell out because my cousin writes notes down too, but she writes it in the respect of, writing it just so that she won't forget the sermon and she'll like remember it and, oh, Jesus was touching me on that day and stuff like that. But I write notes that in such a way, if you were to read them, you would know that I am an atheist. I'm doing this from an atheist perspective. And try putting yourself in my shoes. I'm sitting in my highly evangelical Christian family. 3 rows of them. If they ever saw one of these notes, they would crucify me on the spot. There was a big cross up on the stage. I was looking at it and I was like almost about to, have convulsions on the floor. I was scared. Anyways, the next note. This is when it was getting hard to write notes because people were starting to look at me and I was just kind of have to turn away. Nothing serious. So this next note is kind of hard to read, but I'll try. Jesus says, "I causes sin, pluck it out," literal. Alright, because he said something about how in the New Testament, how Jesus said, even if thine eye causes sin, you must pluck it out, for a lifetime with no sight cannot beat a lifetime of eternity with God, or something like that. Anyways, it was ridiculous, and it totally brings up the question of taking things literally from the Bible again. Because most Christians say that the Bible is the inerrant word of God and it must be taken literally and all that shit. How many times have you looked at a naked woman that wasn't your wife? That is lust, that is sin. Your eyes cause sin, you must pluck it out. No one should have eyes anymore. We should be an eyeless species. Alright, this next note, I think this is my best point for his whole thing, is because he was talking about Revelations a lot, because this was about hell. And Revelations has a lot of doozies about hell. Now, he makes it sound like Revelations happened before, which was never verified, that people flew out of the ground and waited to be judged and all that shit. But just because that there's like a vague promise that it'll happen again, there is no reason to believe that it will happen again, because Revelations apparently happened at the time of Jesus, which was, according to the Christians, about 2,000 years ago. Don't you think in 2,000 years we would have had at least something else like that? You think all the people in hell and all the people in heaven who have already been judged, actually they were talking about Hades and all that shit. They were talking about weird shit, and I couldn't understand it, but Hades is apparently like a prison where they keep the damned, and they let the souls fuck around with God for a while. And then Revelations happens, and then they all come back, and they're all, brutally silenced, and they can't defend themselves. And then God bullies them either into heaven or hell. But they just make it seem like it's going to happen again. I haven't seen people fly out of the ground in the past 2,000 years. There's been no record of that. Alright, this next note is definition of justice butchered. And I remember being so pissed off when he was talking about this. He was like, doesn't anyone in here believe in justice? If I take a piece of candy from you, don't you want revenge on me? No, I don't. It's fucking stupid. It's a piece of candy. I don't give a shit. I don't think taking a piece of candy from someone deserves eternal hellfire. I was so pissed off. I can't remember much about it, but I was really pissed off when he was talking about it. I only have 2 notes left. Okay, the first one is he was talking about a long, drawn-out analogy about do not drive. Oh god, here we go. Basically, the whole point of this point was, if God loves us, how can He send us to hell? Well, his point is that we were all sinners and we did something against Him, and blah blah blah. But this is how he tried to rationalize it. If you have a son who's a little slow, and you have a car that he's able to drive, but the brakes are shot on it, so if he goes in it, there will be dire consequences. You tell your son over and over, do not drive this car. If you do, bad things will happen. You leave notes next to the keys, you leave notes everywhere, you send him emails, you put a 10x4 on the steering wheel, do not drive car. And then your son drives the car and gets himself seriously injured and kills, 100 people. And then he asks the most ridiculous question ever. Would that be the father's fault? Yes, that is his fault. If he knew that that car would kill him and he knew that his son would drive the car, why even own a car? Right? That is the definition of bad parenting. Take the battery out of the car or something. Jesus Christ. And then supposedly, for the first time ever at the church, just to give me a little laugh, the preacher starts crying at the end of the sermon. So, God was looking out for me at least. He gave me a little laugh at the end.